From the world of politics to the world of business, this is Balance of Power. Live from Washington, D.C.
From Bloomberg's Washington, D.C. studios to our TV and radio audiences worldwide. Welcome to Balance of Power. I'm Joe Matthew. President Trump taking executive action to wind down the Department of Education.
And it sounds strange, doesn't it? Department of Education, we're going to eliminate it, and everybody knows it's right.
The agency will continue to run student loans and Pell Grants, the White House says. We'll discuss the implications of all this with former Health Secretary and University President Donna Shalala. Big oil converges on the White House with hopes this week of speeding the permitting process. Energy Secretary Wright joins us to talk about cutting red tape, lowering prices, and refilling the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And as more Republican members of Congress face angry voters at town hall meetings at home, we'll explore the impact of DOGE cuts with Democratic Congresswoman Suzan DelBene and with Sarah Chamberlain, president of the Main Street Republican Partnership. Thanks for being with us on the Thursday edition of Balance of Power. With me here in Washington tonight is Bloomberg's Texas Bureau Chief, Julie Fine. It's great to have you in Washington. Thanks for coming along for the ride.
Thanks for having me, Joe, and what a busy day you've had.
Well, it's same for you. It's been a busy day at the White House, and that is where we start first, Julie. Breaking news from the White House, where President Trump just reintroduced the prospect of a minerals deal with Ukraine.
We're also signing agreements in various locations to unlock rare earths and minerals and lots of other things all over the world, but in particular Ukraine. We're doing very well with regard to Ukraine and Russia. And one of the things we are doing is signing a deal very shortly with respect to rare earths with Ukraine, which they have tremendous value in rare earth, and we appreciate that.
This, of course, follows a Truth Social post we told you about yesterday. President Trump following his call with President Zelensky that made no reference to a minerals deal, rather a possible U.S. investment in Ukrainian power plants, including nuclear plants. We're going to talk about both of these ideas coming up a bit later this hour, as we mentioned, with Energy Secretary Wright. Meantime, at the White House, and just moments ago, in front of the flags of all 50 states and a group of school children in the East Room, the president signed an executive order that he says will dismantle the Department of Education.
We're going to be returning education very simply back to the states where it belongs, and this is a very popular thing to do, but much more importantly, it's a common sense thing to do, and it's going to work.
This is where we start this evening with Kate Ackley of Bloomberg Government with us at the table. Kate, it's great to have you with us here. This is really happening, but is it happening? The president promised to eliminate the department. This appears to just be a dramatic scaling down.
Right. It seems from all of our reporting, and even the administration seems to acknowledge that it would take Congress, which, created the Department of Education, that it would take an act of Congress to abolish it. So we may be talking about sort of distinctions or, definitions. In reality, much of what the Department of Education does, they've already let go of half of the employees there through executive action, and these are just additional executive actions to roll back the functions of the department.
I mean, this cannot be a surprise. This is a president who ran saying, hey, I'm going to do this. So have groups that are against it, Democrats, people concerned about what happens next. Have they already been preparing, and what are their next steps?
They've been preparing. I think, though, when we've seen all of this across the board with the DOGE cuts, the president did run on eliminating the education department and all of these, cuts to the federal government. But he's taken this, and along with Elon Musk, in a much, I would say, bolder direction than even people had predicted. I talked recently with former Senator Richard Burr of North Carolina, who's representing several universities in the mix, with this, with these cuts. And he said, he's been around Washington for 30 years, and people that whole time have been trying to get rid of the education department, get rid of, do big cuts, and they haven't been able to do it. This time, though, maybe this president is going to do it in a more bold way. But we've heard it before. We've heard campaign promises like that before. It hasn't happened. Will it happen this time? We'll be watching on Capitol Hill. Can they get this through the House and the Senate?
That's where the answer will be found. Kate Ackley, thank you so much, Kate, from Bloomberg Government, setting us up this evening for our next conversation with Donna Shalala. The former Democratic Congresswoman from Florida is with us. She's also former chancellor of the University of Wisconsin, president of the University of Miami and Hunter College, as well as former Secretary of Health and Human Services in the Clinton administration. Secretary, thanks. It's great to have you back on Bloomberg TV and radio. You have an epic business card, but I want to tap your education experience on this move today and just ask you broadly what this move actually means for American students.
Well, it's like having schoolyard bullies, picking on the most vulnerable students and young people and teachers who teach in low-income schools. I was actually there. Early in my career, I was tapped to help pull education out of HEW and create the department. So I actually know the origins of the department. But what does the department do? It takes care of, it sends money to school districts for disabled students. It is the largest contributor to low-income students through the Pell Grants to enable them to go to college. It sends money probably an average of 15%, but for many low-income schools, it's higher than that. For schools that have the largest number of poor students, you can't legally dismantle those programs or dismantle the department without congressional approval. So this is theater at the moment. Firing employees, I mean, there'll obviously be court cases, but it will slow down the delivery of those programs if they're able to take half the employees of the smallest department, by the way, in the federal government. It's 0.2% of the federal budget. So it's a pattern. Pick on the most vulnerable people in our society, the poorest children, the most disabled children, the parents that are very low income and want their children to have an equal opportunity. The problem in spending, expecting the states to cover this, is education is funded basically by the property tax. So if we didn't have a strong federal role, children's education would be determined by where they live as opposed to who they are. And that's why the Department of Education was created. So,
Secretary, I hate to interrupt you, but I do want to ask, because you just went through a laundry list of services that are provided by the Department of Education. So in the meantime, who delivers those services and how do children get served?
Well, Pell Grants go directly to the students. Title I goes directly to the states, to the school districts directly. That's the money that evens out the difference for low-income schools, for schools that have lots of low-income students. And the same thing for the Disability Act that provides disability money to schools that have students who are disabled to make sure that they have equal opportunity to education. And then there's the Office of Civil Rights, which tries to fight for equity for all of the young people in our country. There are some special grant programs, but those are the big ones, along with Pell Grants. Yeah. And of course, historic Black colleges have been getting money through the Education Department, which Donald Trump supported in his first term. So, you know, if you look at the pattern of the Muscovites and the Trump people, they're picking on the most vulnerable people in our society, the most vulnerable programs, the programs that feed people who don't have enough food, who provide education support for low-income kids who live in districts in which they couldn't possibly put this kind of resources in. And and stopping young people who are low income and bright from going to community colleges and to four-year colleges. And
well, Secretary, I
think
appreciate the principle
it's like
of what
a
you're
bunch of
talking about,
bullies
particularly
in the
when it
schoolyard.
comes to underserved communities. Understood. But is there not a credible argument around bloat in this department? What can be done to reform it?
Well, what do you want to reform? Do you want to reform the Pell Grants, which are targeted to low-income students?
Well, they're keeping the Pell Grants in the department, though. Is that a good thing in your eyes? Because there was talk about moving Pell Grants and student loans to the Treasury Department.
But if you're not keeping the staff to administer the Pell Grants, and if you're not keeping the staff to administer Title I, and if you're not keeping the staff to administer the programs for disabled students, look, I'm in favor of eliminating waste in every department. I eliminated, when I was Secretary of HHS for 8 years, billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse, working with the IG, with the FBI, with the Justice Department, from the Medicare program, from the Medicaid program, from all of our big programs. So I'm in favor of that. But this is eliminating the people that deliver the programs, and eliminating some of the department's personnel is not the way to do this. You go in with a scalpel if you care about waste.
Got it.
Former Health and Human Services Secretary Donna Shalala, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being with us. Coming up, President Trump renews his push to speed up domestic energy production. A status report from the White House with Energy Secretary Chris Wright. Next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and Radio.
On my first day in office, I declared a national energy emergency. As you've heard me say many times, we have more liquid gold under our feet than any nation on earth, and by far. And now I fully authorize the most talented team ever assembled to go and get it. It's called Drill, Baby, Drill.
President Trump earlier this month in his address to a joint session of Congress reaffirming his commitment to producing more domestic energy. Yesterday, the president hosted a group of oil and gas executives at the White House who pushed the administration to speed up the permitting process through both executive action and, if possible, legislation. Among administration officials in that meeting, the gentlemen were joined by now Energy Secretary Chris Wright with us from the North Lawn of the White House. Mr. Secretary, welcome back to Bloomberg TV and Radio. It's great to have you here. We'd like to cover the waterfront. There's a lot to talk about, including the potential now, apparently, for a minerals deal once again in Ukraine. We've been talking about power plants in Ukraine, but I want to ask you about this meeting and the takeaways. To be a fly on the wall, did you talk about permitting changes that you could make now that would lower the break-even cost of oil to allow producers to keep pumping and keep making money?
We did. You know, we heard a litany of delays, of uncertainty about whether they could get permits, whether they could do this or whether they could do that. So we were in listening mode and heard a number of things. And our message was the goal of this administration, President Trump got elected to increase American energy production. More supply means lower costs, more jobs, more opportunities, and more geopolitical power. So we were in listening mode, but absolutely said we want to be helpful to unleash American energy.
Secretary, when you talk about listening mode, last week I was at Sarah Week by S&P Global in Houston, as were you, and I listened when many CEOs said they had concerns about tariffs. Did you address some of that yesterday at the White House?
Tariffs wasn't discussed at the meeting. It was more a broader unleash American energy and all that. We actually didn't get into the tariff dialogue.
What would you suggest then to energy producers who are concerned, if not about the lasting impact of tariffs, some of the confusion that has surrounded this conversation? Mr. Secretary, you've seen the market reaction, and this is a reality for every business owner.
It is. Look, the president's got a vision. He's got a bold agenda, and it's being created right now. So there's negotiations with multiple countries. Think of his overwhelming goal. He wants reciprocal trade. If a country has high tariffs on us, he wants them to lower their tariffs on us. and he'll match that reciprocally. So these are negotiations that need to go back and forth. So I understand the uncertainty. We all feel it. We all see it. But I think it's a negotiation going to a great place. But we won't have clarity. I think it won't be that long, but we're not there yet.
I do want to ask you a question about our reporting that you will seek up to $20 billion to accomplish the president's goal of refilling the nation's oil reserve. Obviously, you'll have to go to Congress on that. Have you done that? And what will you do about that moving forward in Washington, D.C.?
Yes, it's critical in our ask and in our agenda. You know, that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is for just that. It's to be strategic safety and security in the event of very bad world events. They may never happen. We hope they don't. It's like insurance. But you've got to be prepared for anything. We've got to have our country secure and safe no matter what happens with energy. Because if you get energy wrong, nothing else matters. So, yes, we're going to Congress to get money for that. Sadly, it takes much longer to refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve than it took to drain it for political reasons, not strategic reasons, in the 2022 midterm elections. So it's a multi-year process to fill it. But we want to get going as soon as we can.
We talked about that last time you joined us from Port Sulphur, Secretary. Just quickly before we move on, do you know how soon you can make your first bid on oil, the first batch to refill the SPR?
I suspect that's up to Congress. So Congress is going through a process there.
Now, though, or do you want to see $50 crude before you make that move?
Oh, no, we would happily. We're not going to guess the price of oil and all that. We would happily buy crude right now. Obviously, if we see spikes higher or huge dislocations, we might stop buying crude. But no, if we had the approval right now, we'd be in the market today.
President Trump, Mr. Secretary, reintroduced the prospect of a minerals deal with Ukraine today. This is what he said. I'd love to get your reaction.
We're also signing agreements in various locations to unlock rare earths and minerals and lots of other things all over the world. But in particular, Ukraine, we're doing very well with regard to Ukraine and Russia. And one of the things we are doing is signing a deal very shortly with respect to rare earths with Ukraine, which they have tremendous value in rare earth, and we appreciate that.
Got everyone's antennas up today, Mr. Secretary. What are you hearing about this? How quickly could it happen?
I think a deal could be done quickly. It's a brilliant idea when you think about it. We often use this misnomer term, natural resources. Those resources have been underground for millions of years, and they haven't benefited anyone. I call them natural materials. They only become resources when technology, capital, and human activity brings them out of the ground and turns them into resources. But to have the United States as your partner to develop materials that have been sitting there for a long time unused, that's upside to Ukraine, it's upside to the United States, and of course it's a joining together of the nations in an effort on the ground in Ukraine. If I'm Ukraine, I am all in on that deal, and as the American Energy Secretary, I am all in on that deal.
You know, last night we spoke with retired General Wesley Clark, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. Here's what he had to say about putting U.S. involvement in energy facilities in Ukraine.
Those are old, what we consider obsolescent nuclear plants. We didn't design those plants. They're not our plants. We can't just transplant people over there and say, hey, by the way, this is the GE design. Go after it. It isn't. Mm-hmm. But yes, we could learn to take care of those plants. Zaporizhia, the plant's been partially occupied by the Russians. They've threatened to damage it and destroy it at various times. It wouldn't be such a bad thing if the United States says, well, now you can't touch it because we're in it.
Secretary, your response to that?
Yeah, of course there's complexities in everything when you do business offshore, overseas. Boy, I've done business in countries much more difficult to operate in than Ukraine. But, of course, the general's right. It's a different plant design. But you would bring local experts that know that plant, and you'd bring high-end nuclear experts from the United States. And together, I think wise decisions would be made. If the political decision is made for the U.S. to lead the operation of that plant, so be it. We could do that, I think, with very little problem.
Well, Secretary, have you spoken with any American companies that would be interested in buying a plant like Zaporizhzhia? And if this happened, whether it was that or another, would your department regulate it?
No dialogues about that yet. No dialogues about that yet. But America's full of expertise in this area. And boy, I, at the Department of Energy, have been overwhelmed with people putting their hand in the air and saying, put me in. How can I help? What can I do? So I think we would see tremendous interest. Something needed to be done. We'd have tons of people wanting to do it.
Energy Secretary Chris Wright, thank you so much for being with us. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang spoke to the company's quantum ambitions today as tariffs on semiconductor chips are set to take place in just days. Here's President Trump on his meeting with Huang back in January.
He's a great gentleman, and I hadn't met him. He's the biggest in the world in terms of chips, and I can't say what's going to happen with it. We had a meeting. It was a good meeting, but eventually we're going to put tariffs on chips.
Joining us now is Bloomberg's Mike Shepard. Thanks so much for being with us, Mike.
Great to be here. Thanks, Julie.
So you see that video and you think they are definitely working together, but NVIDIA now going to put billions of dollars of chips into the United States. The White House is celebrating it, but yet this is something NVIDIA did.
NVIDIA was really moving in this direction. This was something that they wanted to do to really build some resilience in their supply chains. Remember, their main producer of the advanced AI chips that have fueled its rise in the stock market and really made it such a phenomenon in the tech industry are made in Taiwan by TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. And having so many assets in one place, especially as Donald Trump is considering tariffs not only on semiconductors, but reciprocal tariffs against countries he sees as having a trade imbalance with the U.S., that's a little bit of a risk for companies like NVIDIA, but not just NVIDIA. Also, there is the whole China question that executives like Jensen Huang must think about when they're doing business in Taiwan. They need to diversify that supply chain, so this is a big part of it. And remember, TSMC, their CEO, stood alongside Donald Trump just a few weeks ago to say that they were going to invest an additional $100 billion in manufacturing here in the U.S. And that same day, NVIDIA stepped up to say, yes, we are a part of that. We are going to be making even more of our semiconductors here in the U.S. at those plants.
Yet Jensen Huang did not stand up with Donald Trump in the Roosevelt Room or in the East Room or the Oval Office to make a grand announcement. And it's really interesting, sort of the elusive nature of this celebrity executive. Mike, clearly the White House wants to be associated with this based on the statement. How come he's the one, though, that doesn't go kiss the ring, that doesn't do the big public splash with Donald Trump?
Well, see, we've seen with other CEOs, kissing the ring also comes with a little bit of a price. You then become beholden to Donald Trump and the administration and its objectives and priorities. And if there's ever a moment where they diverge, it creates a problem for the company in terms of its strategic planning and its investments.
Well, it's interesting because the White House tweeting about this deal. But again, like you said, and Joe, you pointed out, it's NVIDIA that's really motoring this and making it happen. How have they been able to thread the needle that so many other CEOs have not been able to do?
Well, the one thing they have as an advantage in this whole conversation with the White House and really the rest of the world and the industry is that they are far and away the leaders when it comes to making these advanced chips that are needed to power AI. Nobody does it better, and nobody is really close enough to them just yet to be able to compete with them in that way and in that space. You know, for a while, they have been right up there as one of the world's most valuable companies, not just tech companies, but overall. And, you know, they can't keep up with demand from the hyperscalers like Amazon and Microsoft and Meta for these chips to help power the data centers that are powering these new models.
Some better vibes here in the after-hours session after the beatdown that we've seen, some of the questioning following DeepSeek. Micron ups the forecast. The stock is rising. NVIDIA is up in sympathy. This is interesting as the mood kind of shifts, the mood music shifts behind AI.
Well, it is. And Jensen Huang tried to address earlier this week, as he did during the company's earnings call last month, the whole DeepSeek question. In January, when DeepSeek had that breakthrough, everyone looked at it and thought, wait a minute, AI can be done on the cheap. Maybe you don't need as many of those fancy NVIDIA accelerators to get done what you need to in developing these large language models. His point today and a few weeks back was, look, you will need our chips, the demand will be so great once you take it to scale.
And the hyperscalers are buying them, aren't they, Mike? Thank you so much. Mike Shepard on Balance of Power. We'll have much more ahead right here on Bloomberg TV and radio.
Please do not discount that what you are doing here tonight, and I hope continue to do not think that that doesn't matter. It matters a lot to not go quietly into the night as these harms are being inflicted and the Constitution is being challenged. They're counting on us getting tired, thinking we can't stop it, thinking he has all the power. The Constitution says he doesn't. I say he doesn't. Everyone here says he doesn't, and we have to continue to remind them of that.
Democratic Congressman Pat Ryan in a town hall last night. Poughkeepsie, New York, a district narrowly carried by Kamala Harris in November. Across the country, the lawmakers holding town halls. We've brought you inside some of them with mixed reaction from voters, in many cases angry reaction from voters. Here's Republican Congressman Chuck Edwards of North Carolina, a recent town hall, for a taste.
Why do you support Trump's destructive and disastrous trade war? So would you give me a chance to answer this question, and then you can start yelling after I answer it?
We bring in Democratic Congresswoman Suzan DelBene of Washington, who runs the DCCC and is largely responsible for helping to get Democrats elected and reelected to the House. Congresswoman, is this a great moment for you? I mean, that's quite the split screen that we just painted, and we've heard that Republican leadership is urging members to not hold as many town halls or do teletown halls. The fact of the matter is voters are angry in many corners of the country. How do you capitalize on it when you eye the midterms?
Well, voters are angry because they are being impacted by the actions of this administration, by Elon Musk and Doge, and by Republicans in Congress. They see their costs going up. Many have lost jobs. They see important services that they depend on being cut or gutted. They're worried about health care and Social Security. So, of course, folks are angry and they're scared. And they are reaching out to their elected officials in all ways that they can, sending letters, phone calls, and showing up at town halls. And Republicans don't necessarily want to hear from everyone in their community, so they don't want to have a forum where they're going to hear from them. And the concern on their part is they're going to hear things they don't want to hear. They are really working for Donald Trump. They are not working for their constituents. So not surprising that people are showing up and are concerned. They should be. And public sentiment is really important because that can drive what happens across our country. And I think people want to make sure their stories and their voices are heard.
Well, you're talking about voters. They're angry at cuts. They're angry at Doge. But Chuck Schumer, I mean, he has received some blowback as well. I mean, did he just give Democrats the opportunity to be angry at him?
Well, you know, the thing that people are angry about is what this administration is doing. They're angry about the future of our country, whether that means health care and the cuts to Medicaid that are upcoming. They're worried about the kind of priority of giving tax breaks to the wealthy and well-connected and cut important services that our communities rely on. That's what people are angry about, and they want us to do everything possible to stop that. Republicans have the majority in the House and the Senate. They don't seem interested in doing anything on kind of acting as a co-equal branch of government. So that's why it's so important we take back the majority in the House of Representatives. We know when we have great candidates across the country who are talking about the issues that matter, we win. We picked up seats last cycle, and folks are engaged, they're involved, they're concerned, and that's going to mean that people are going to be out there voting for great people, and we're going to see a Democratic majority in the House in 2026.
Well, we have heard from some fairly outraged Democrats over the continuing resolution, Congresswoman. I think that's what Julie is referring to here. And there have been calls, of course, for Chuck Schumer to step down as minority leader. Would you make that call?
Well, Chuck Schumer's the leader in the Senate, and we've got important things that we've got to focus on. I think we all have to continue to work together with our shared goals of making sure that we are standing up for working families, that we are standing up against the terrible actions of this administration. We are united there, and that needs to be our collective focus. So we're going to continue to work together with our partners in the Senate to stand up for the American people. But let's be clear, the folks who are not standing up for the American people, the folks who are beholden to Donald Trump and are more focused on working for him than their constituents, are Republicans, and particularly Republicans in the House.
Well, as the midterms come up, you need many of your members, most of them, to be on the same page. So how do you make that happen right now with definitely differing feelings on the future of the party and who should possibly lead it?
Well, I actually think we are all focused on standing up for families, on making sure that we are lowering costs. Let's be clear, the biggest issues, even in the last election, were about affordability, lowering costs, the cost of housing, the cost of food, the cost of health care, concerns around public safety or immigration and the border. And we know when we have great candidates who are talking about these issues directly in their communities, they win. That's why we gain seats in the House, and that's why we're going to win next year. Talking about the issues that are important to American people. We are united on that, and Republicans are ignoring all of it. We've seen prices go up. No interest on the Republican side on lowering costs for families. They want to dismantle the federal government. They want to take away important programs that people rely on, like Social Security and Medicaid, and are disrupting the economy for many businesses and for families with tariffs. So there's no focus on the American people on their side, and we're going to hold them accountable for that.
Well, I wonder, how are you guiding members, Congresswoman, on their posture, on their rhetoric at this time? Because you can go one way or the other. I remember watching in our coverage of President Trump's address to Congress. You were sitting right behind Congressman Al Green as he was yelling at the President of the United States. Is it about standing up and reasserting your position, or is it about letting go of the reins right now, giving rope and allowing the Doge to kind of write its own ticket?
Well, I think the most important thing is to tell stories, the impacts, just as you were saying, the impacts of the decisions that this administration is making, the impacts of Elon Musk and Doge on the American people. The stories are all over the country. People who've lost their jobs, who've lost access to important services, who have seen their prices go up. The concerns are all across the country, hence the outrage from folks everywhere. But those stories are really impactful, and people want to make sure their stories are heard. They want people to understand the impact of these decisions on the ground. And so we are focused on sharing those stories, making sure that people understand the connection between these terrible policy decisions or executive orders on the Republican side, the impact those are having on the ground in our communities. That's the key focus. And so that's where we will continue to make our focus, and that's really what the American people want to see and understand, what this means to them. And we also need to be clear what we could do instead, how we could stand up for working families, make them a priority, and what we can do to build a strong economy that works for everyone. Those are the issues that folks want to hear about. And frankly, that's the action they want to see Congress taking, not members of, especially Republicans in the House, who don't seem to be able to do anything except whatever Donald Trump tells them to do.
DCCC raising over $11.1 million in February. As you move forward, you just went through your message. Getting everyone on the same page and delivering it, that's a different story. How do you plan to do that?
Great candidates. That's why it makes a huge difference. We have 13 Democrats in districts that Trump also won. The reason they won is because they were strong candidates talking about the issues that matter in those communities. We're going to continue to have great candidates who are going to flip seats across the country, make sure that we're supporting folks in our toughest districts across the country. But the American people are outraged, and we're going to hold Republicans accountable too. So the resources are important to making sure we continue to run strong campaigns all across the country, have great candidates, get their message out, and folks want to see a change, and that's also why we've had such strong support even so early in the cycle.
Congresswoman, the president wants to kill the CHIPS Act, or at least the money that's left in there, as he told the speaker in his address to Congress. He's mentioned this a couple of times recently. Our audience should know you're a former tech executive. You worked at Microsoft, and as a member of Congress, you were on the ground floor of creating or helping to pass that CHIPS Act legislation. Will you fight to defend it, or is the president onto something here, getting a $100 billion plus investment from NVIDIA, similar size investments from the likes of Taiwan Semiconductors and others to start working here in the U.S.?
You know, the American people want to see strong domestic capacity for important products. Chips, a very important strategic product for our communities and for our country. Want to see strong domestic capacity there. That's why this legislation had strong bipartisan support to make sure we were building our domestic capacity for chip production, and strong support in communities that see the new jobs coming to their communities, the new opportunities there. So it's a good question for a lot of Republicans who also supported the CHIP Act to have them kind of explain why they think or would support President Trump doing this. So these investments are critical for our community and critical for us to have strong supply chains going forward.
Democratic Congresswoman Suzan DelBene of Washington, thanks so much for being with us. Coming up, we'll show you we'll look at congressional Republicans and how they're tackling heated town halls in their districts with Sarah Chamberlain, President and CEO of the Republican Main Street Partnership, next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and Radio.
To be clear, there's no legal difference between Jerome Powell and me. In fact, he and I were both originally appointed by President Trump around the same time in early 2018. And if the president can illegally remove me, he can illegally remove Jerome Powell. And the market that depends on the independence of the Fed and monetary policy being set not to do favors to the president's political allies or fortunes, but to protect the integrity of the U.S. economy, people should be very worried about that.
Rebecca Kelly Slaughter, one of the two Democratic FTC commissioners dismissed by President Trump this week, talking with us at this time last evening on Balance of Power. An example of executive overreach, according to Democrats, which is why Slaughter is planning to sue, as she told us. And it's also why many Republicans are getting an earful from voters at town hall meetings, as we've already shown you in their home districts. Joining us now to talk about this and a lot more, Sarah Chamberlain, the president and CEO of the Republican Main Street Partnership. Great to have you back.
Thank you.
I don't know where you are on this idea of overreach. You, of course, represent more than 100 members of Congress who in many ways are living in the shadow of this White House. What do you think?
They are, and they're the ones doing these town halls,
Yeah,
I might add. They don't think the president's overreaching. They're happy with what's going on. Elon Musk has admitted that he's made a few mistakes in this process, but they're happy overall with what's happening. The federal government, it's bloated. There are wonderful people who work for the federal government who do their jobs very well, but there's also some bloat. We need to go in and clean that up. Bill Clinton certainly did it years ago. It's okay. We need to do it again.
We are not seeing as many Republican town halls. Mick Mulvaney was on with us earlier saying Republicans need to be out and they need to be hearing from their constituents. What do you think?
I agree, and that's why. So I saw you showed Edwards, Mike Flood.
Yeah.
I mean, they're members of Main Street, and they felt the same way. They're like, we need to go and do this. We need to meet the constituents. Though what they found interesting, I spoke with both of them afterwards. They said some of them we didn't recognize. We're not really sure where some of the people are from. Some of them, they feel, of course, some of them are from their districts, and they're happy to interact with them. But some of the louder ones, they said, we've never seen before.
Interesting.
So,
well, I ask you because, you know, mixed words, Julie, they need to take their lumps.
Yes.
Is that part of the job right now, though, to be a listening board? And what do you do with it when you come back to Washington?
It is absolutely part of the job, which is why a lot of the members of Main Street are out there doing that. It's important to listen to your constituents and understand what they're thinking and feeling. But then you bring it back to Washington and talk to your colleagues and try to pass legislation that appeals to them. There is so much false information going on, though. Like, we're not cutting Medicaid. I mean, we're not going to go after Social Security checks. So, like, they're trying to correct that as well as they go through this process.
One issue Republicans are going to be hearing about, and some will get a lot of praise from their constituents because they'll say there was bloat, was the Department of Education. But that is another one they will have to be answering questions about. What do you think is their best messaging on that subject? You're talking about kids.
We are talking about kids, and we're really talking about teachers. I mean, we're very supportive of the local teachers. Absolutely. I actually have teachers in my own family. But, like, taking the money and giving it back locally where they know the teachers, they know the kids the best, they actually do support that. They think that there's a lot of bloat. Again, lovely, great employees, obviously, but there's some employees that really could be cut, and the money given back to on the ground where they know the teachers and the students the best.
We've got another headline breaking now. This is from Semaphore.
Okay.
CEO, COO, and others fired today at Freddie Mac, which may not come as a big surprise to you. We've been talking about this idea of reforming Fannie and Freddie. This is something that Bill Ackman has talked about a lot. Will there be support by the Republican conference on this in the House?
I'd be surprised if there wasn't support. I mean, they're looking to make some changes there. Yeah, absolutely. Again, they're really trying to clean up the bloat in the federal government and cut expenses. We have a huge deficit. We need to tackle that.
And by the way, the Republicans are not the only ones that are hearing about things at town halls. You have the Democrats that are facing that as well right now. But the Republicans largely have fallen in line behind President Trump on most of his policies. How long do you expect that to continue, especially when you look at issues like tariffs that can really affect businesses and CEOs?
Right now, it's going to continue. You know, they do have closed-door conversations with him. I mean, publicly, they're very, very supportive. But, you know, they do go over to the White House. They talk to him. Elon Musk goes over to the Capitol a lot and talks with them. So behind closed doors, there are some interesting discussions, I'll put it that way. But publicly, they support the president. The president is the leader of the party. Right now, you know, they feel he's doing a good job. We'll wait and see 6 months from now. I don't know. But right now, they will support the president. 100%.
So the government didn't shut down. You were genuinely concerned about it last time you were with us. We've avoided that. When lawmakers come back, though, it's the real job. We've been agonizing over keeping the lights on, but now it's on to reconciliation. What's happening in the home districts now on the phone calls in the evening, maybe at the partnership townhouse, members talking with leadership about actually crafting a bill, because the speaker says he wants this done by May. Is that even possible?
They'd like to have it done by May. Has to be done by December.
That's the real.
I think actually, if I was predicting, it would be more of a July bill right before the August recess. But they want to get it done. I mean, they've been trying to do this for a while.
Debt limit, Trump tax cuts. Border.
Border is very important. It's really what they've told the American people. The American people tell them that this is what they want, and we're trying to answer that for them.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the border. I mean, you're not seeing the mass deportations that were discussed at the beginning of this administration, but what you are seeing is in the state of Texas, which I know you are very familiar with, a very sealed border right now. I mean, certainly border crossings have dropped substantially. It's something that the Trump administration is touting. But what do you think is next when it comes to these mass deportations?
I think we're going to keep doing them. I think you're going to see more of what happened on Saturday. We have a part of Main Street, it's called Women to Women. We poll women from around the country. Yes, they realize that maybe the third plane took off after the judge, but they're like, these people are out of our country. They support that. So if the more we can deport individuals like that, the better. But closing the border was really extremely important so we don't have more people coming over. Trying to have them come through a legal immigration process is really where the Main Street members are.
There are calls for the administration to provide some evidence that these Venezuelan detainees were actually criminals, were actually gang members. Should that be part of this process, transparency on who these people are?
I think it absolutely should be. 100%. I think the questions would then go away. People would be like, okay, we do support getting these 3 planes full of these individuals out of the country. Certainly the video showed it was a little bit scary as a suburban mom myself. But I think that we need to come clean and tell them, like, this is what we know about these individuals, and this is why it was important to remove them from our soil.
And the court's obviously a very large issue for the Trump administration. I mean, you heard what President Trump said about judges recently. Then you've got the Supreme Court justice basically striking back, saying there's a system for that. I mean, does that help the Republican cause in that situation?
You know, President Trump says a lot of things, but the system will hold. You know, there's not, if you see Congressman Jim Jordan didn't come out and say, yes, we're going to impeach these judges. You know, people are rolling it back, going to take a look at it. I think the Supreme Court justice was correct. We're going to just let him talk, but the system will hold.
Sarah Chamberlain, it was so nice to see you. Sarah Chamberlain, president and CEO of the Republican Main Street Partnership. Thank you so much for being with us. And coming up, the 2025 World Happiness Report is out. We'll take a look at where the U.S. ranked on this year's list on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio alongside Julie Fine. I'm Joe Matthew. Thanks for being with us on Balance of Power as we are actually starting to look like spring here in the nation's capital. Of course, today is the first day of spring. Happy spring. You picked the great time to come here. The National Park Service has updated its cherry blossom forecast, I'll have you know. Thanks to the mild weather we're having. Look at that gorgeous shot of the blossoms in front of the White House. D.C.'s famed cherry blossoms are set to bloom earlier than usual this year, giving us all something to look forward to. Maybe feel more happy, Julie Fine. Did you see this new global ranking of happiest nations? The U.S. fell to its lowest ever 24th place.
Well, I'm going to say that I am going to make that number better because I am super happy.
Well, that's
and I'm
great.
looking at that picture. That makes me very happy.
Like
so hopefully I can affect that number.
It's a little gray here, but we're going to do better. A couple of weeks, you're going to come here on vacation, Cherry Blossom Festival, the Tidal Basin. Before you know it, it'll be summer. In the meantime, check out the Washington Edition newsletter. You can find it on the terminal and online. And thanks for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with Julie Fine. I'm Joe Matthew. This is Bloomberg.